Supplies. I'm the president of the NAACP Grant, which is one of the sponsors with our good friends from the Garden State Bar Association. Thank you so much. And Maine and Pleasantville NAACP. We want to thank all of you for taking the time to come out this evening for a very important subject, environmental justice, which is a subject that really does not get the kind of attention that it should get, especially in communities of color. Tonight, our chairperson, Sierra Logan Esquire, has gathered a very distinguished and esteemed panel that you will hear from that will enlighten you to a lot of the issues on environmental justice. Environmental justice is not only a national priority for the NAACP, it's our local and regional and state priority to inform people, to educate people, and to take the necessary legislative action to cure some of the disparities we have in the environmental justice field. And I want to recognize our freehold here, Karen Fitzpatrick, who is a freehold at large here in Atlantic County. And we're going to be asking her to help us with some of the legislative remedies that will come up as a result of this panel and other things that we do. So without further ado, our moderator and chairman of our Environmental Justice Committee, Sierra Logan.
So I want to start by thanking everyone for coming here tonight. This is a pretty good group, so thank you for deciding to spend time with us tonight to talk about environmental justice issues. This is a little bit informal. What we're going to do is we're going to have our panelists answer a few questions. As you're listening, jot notes down, because toward the end, I'm going to ask that you all participate, or those of you who would like to participate and ask a few questions that have come up during the panelist discussion. And feel free. Nothing's wrong about it. You don't have to stand up. You just raise your hand and kind of say what you will. So we're here to talk about environmental justice. According to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, regardless of color, regardless of national origin or income, with respect to the development, the implementation and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Fair treatment means that no group of people should bear a disproportionate share of the negative environmental consequences resulting from industrial, governmental, and commercial operations and policies. Meaningful involvement means that people have an opportunity to participate in decisions about activities that affect their environment and their health. The public contributions and community concerns will be considered in the decision-making process. And decision makers will seek out and facilitate the involvement of those potentially affected. In other words, we all have a seat at the table. I am joined today by a good group of people, distinguished panelists. I am going to start from my far right. Bruce Ward Esquire, the Executive Director of the Atlantic City Municipal Utilities Authority. Marissa Slayton Esquire, Director of Regulatory Strategy and Services from the Atlantic City Electric. Van McPherson Esquire, Assistant General Counsel at South Jersey Industries. Jocelyn Sawyer, representative from the Food and Water Watch, and then to my immediate right, Amani Reed, a senior college student at Temple University. I'd like to start with Amani. Just kind of tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how it relates to environmental justice issues, and then we'll work our way down the table.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Once again, my name is Amani Reed. I'm a senior at Temple University. And some of the things that I'm doing that's related to environmental justice and environmental issues includes a fellowship at Temple University called Owls on the Block, and basically we're focused on connecting the community with students to make sure that blocks are clean and students are connected with their neighbors and respecting their neighbors. I'm also interning at Overbrook Environmental Education Center in West Philadelphia, and I'm working on environmental and food justice projects. And I'm also a student peer advisor at Temple University, so I'm helping with professional development and career opportunities.
Awesome.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Sawyer. I'm the South Jersey organizer with Food and Water Watch and Food and Water Action, and we are a national environmental advocacy organization. We work to mobilize people to reclaim their political power and hold elected officials accountable to ensure that everybody has clean, safe water to drink, safe food, and a livable climate. And a lot of our work here in New Jersey is around energy and promoting clean and renewable energy, stopping dirty energy projects, and then also around keeping our water safe and public and out of the hands of corporations that put profit before people. That work requires everybody at the local and state and national levels standing up, claiming political power, and reminding our elected representatives that they represent us, the people. Glad to be here today.
I'm Sam McPherson. I am Assistant General Counsel for South Jersey Industries. That is South Jersey Gas Company, which is local here, Elizabethtown Gas Company, and Elkton Gas Company in Maryland. I've been there for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, I was with Parker McKay. I was a litigator in the government affairs section and the construction section. In my time at South Jersey Industries, among other things, I am the lead counsel for most of our environmental issues. So whether that's like remediation, site cleanups, things of that nature. I also deal with customer service, which I saw Maurice's handout. We deal with issues with heat credits, UFSAP, and things that help the customer be able to meet their bills.
Good evening. My name is Marisa Slayton, and I am the Director of Regulatory Strategy and Services for Atlantic City Electric. I also represent Delmarva Power, based out of Delaware. I am a New Jersey native, born and raised. Before I joined Atlantic City Electric, I used to be at the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities as the Director of their Office of Clean Energy. My role at Atlantic City Electric is to engage mostly with the State Regulatory Commission and make sure that we are being responsive to the expectations of the state, but also the expectations of our customers. And so to that end, I deal a lot with our clean energy initiatives and what that looks like in terms of rolling it out across the southern New Jersey region. So I'll stop there, and we can certainly get into more of those details shortly.
Good evening. I'm Bruce Ward. I was born and raised in the public housing projects here in Atlantic City. I wouldn't be sitting here today without the nurturing of my parents, who purchased the World Book Encyclopedia when we were kids. Went on to college and came back to Atlantic City and became an instructor for Cape Atlantic Community College. Then moved over to the Richard Stockton College as an administrator. At that point, I was 39 years old, and I said, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I went to law school. Moved in the dorm at 39 years old. Came out of law school, and I worked as general counsel for Reliance Healthcare, which is still here in Atlantic County. Moved into public service as councilman for the first ward, City of Atlantic City, then city solicitor for the City of Atlantic City, then chief municipal judge for the City of Atlantic City. And I'm currently now the executive director for the Atlantic City Municipal Utilities Authority, and we provide award-winning drinking water to the citizens and businesses of Atlantic City.
All right, so we're breaking down a big topic tonight, environmental justice. I tried to give a definition of it. It was a little bit dense, but in your own words, what does what you do, how is that environmental justice? How do you see that? And why should we as community members be concerned with that? And anyone can jump in.
I'll jump in. As a public water system owned and operated by the citizens of Atlantic City, recognizing that the citizens of Atlantic City constitute 40% of the population living at or below poverty, we strive to provide affordable rates for the one utility that you cannot do without. There's no substitute for water. So in terms of justice, we feel that our efforts are matching the needs of this community to the best of our ability.
Bruce, is there another side of that to where the water is owned by the county or by the state?
If the water is not owned by your municipality, either as an authority or owned by the city and operated as a city department, then water is owned by an investor-owned water company. An investor-owned water company is a business where there must be a profit for the shareholders, there must be bonuses for the directors, and the rates are substantially higher. That would be proven especially in this county, as you look at the rates for New Jersey American Water compared to ours. Those rates are 133% more than the city's water system.
Well, Jocelyn, I saw you shaking your head a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, Food and Water Watch in New Jersey, one of the focuses of our works in this state is actually protecting public water and fighting back against corporate water grab. It's water privatization is a big issue in New Jersey. Nationally, the average is about 10% of water systems are owned by investor-owned companies, and in New Jersey, it's almost half. I think it's 40%. And we have the national headquarters of American Water, it's located in Camden, as well as the national headquarters of two other water corporations. And so that's something that we also are very concerned with. And the organization we worked with Mr. Word and here in Atlantic City 2 years ago in helping to fight back a corporate grab of Atlantic City's award-winning water. And I myself, that was before my time with the organization, but I'm so glad to have the opportunity to meet you tonight and do that here. But yeah, it's a particularly big issue in New Jersey and so connected with justice because it's, corporations are when they come in to privatize water, they tend to target communities that are low-income communities. There's a history of, not the case for Atlantic City, I understand, but in some areas, a history of disinvestment or underfunding in the water system, and they use that as an excuse to say this needs to be privatized, this will do better if it's under corporate control, when that really is not the case from the experience of the people who are using that water and paying for it.
So we mentioned that water is here in Atlantic City. It is award-winning. Does that mean we have no problems in Atlantic City as it concerns our water? Are we facing a company that wants to, or a group that wants to privatize the water? Or I know that we're doing pretty well, but I'm wondering if there's anything that we should be concerned about or be aware about.
We always have to be aware and alert because we are a takeover target. It would be very, very profitable for a company to come in and take over Atlantic City's public water system. And it would reduce the number of locally employed individuals because, again, there are staff that are in their other systems that they could bring in. But again, I'm focusing really on the rates, the water rates that our citizens can afford given the challenges of their economics. And so we always have our ears up and our eyes open in terms of threats to our public water system.
So other than water, we also have a panel to talk about food and energy and health. What does environmental justice issues look like for the rest of our panelists and what they're doing?
I'll jump in. I think that environmental justice, it means a couple of things. And some of them, Sierra, you touched on in your opening remarks. It means that you have affordability, right? That the energy that is being delivered to you is affordable, that it is reliable, it's safe. You have access to the different types of energy resources that are out there. So right now in New Jersey, there is a big push for a clean energy economy, right? So the governor has announced that there's a goal for 100% clean energy economy by 2050 and a 50% clean energy economy by 2030. So what does that really mean? It means that you're gonna see a lot more wind as an energy source, like offshore wind, right off the coast of Atlantic City, for example. You're going to see a lot more solar, right? Right now, there are, I think, over about 117,000 solar installations in the state, and about 30,000 of them are right here in the Atlantic City Electric's territory. That's a pretty significant amount. And all of these things happen not just in silos, but there are processes before rates go into effect, right? Before projects get built in your neighborhoods. And so it's very important that you are paying attention to when these opportunities occur so that you can go and make your voice heard, right? That you are either attending in person and putting your voice on the record, or you are submitting written comments to say we support this or we don't support it, or here's something else that all of you policymakers need to think about. But it's important, and it's important because the corporations, they have people, right, that are there, and they're making sure that the decision makers know what their interests are. Right? And those interests, they include that of their customers, all of their customers, right? Even customers in Atlantic City and customers that would be considered part of the environmental justice community. But you need to be there to advocate for yourselves as well. I think for Atlantic City Electric, when we think of our priorities, customer focus is a tremendous part of that. We know that we are not a company, right, unless we're not a successful company if we're not treating our customers well and we're not being responsive to their needs. We know that we are not going to be successful if we're not treating our employees well, right, and ensuring that they're safe. Because when the lights come on, there are guys in the poles, right, in the middle of storms and in bad weather, making sure that the lights come back on. And we can't ignore that part of it as well. So environmental justice for me is the entirety of it. It's ensuring that you have accessibility in communities who typically don't have as large of a voice, right? And you're ensuring that you've got affordability as well.
I'll jump in similarly. And from a gas perspective, it ends up being safety also. So in EJ impacted communities, you're typically in a space where there's a lot of people in a very small area. So whenever there's a gas incident to safety or electrical incident to safety, a lot more people are at stake in a very small area. So like safety first for us to be able to provide our customers safely and be able to provide them the service that we're trying to provide is very important to us. Secondly, with our customer focus, we've done a lot more community outreach over the last 2 to 3 years. I think the company has done in quite some time, and it's making sure that we notify our customers about all the proper affordable options for energy that exist, whether it's applying for a heat credit or a USF credit. There are 2 programs where people can apply to receive grants for energy services. Also, there's ways to the state has made a big emphasis on reducing everyone's energy footprint. So energy efficiency programs for a gas company, most people think that we'll give you the biggest, dirtiest machine that's possible, so you can heat up as much gas as possible. But there's been a whole entire program now where it's like, all right, well, we'll give you a Nest thermostat, or we'll give you some things that help you reduce your energy footprint, person to person, as well as an organization. So that's really where our focus has been over the last few years.
And then as a senior at Temple, environmental justice, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I've been at, I guess I started my tenure at Temple in 2016, and just kind of being able to work in the Philadelphia community, I've seen a lot of environmental racism, which I was definitely tied to environmental justice. And I think that looks like the gentrification that's going on in the city, how low-income people of color are being taken out of their homes, and along with that, in regards to food, low-income communities in Philadelphia do not have exposure to healthy foods usually. If they're in communities with a lot of fast food restaurants or a lot of like coffee stores, which only have so many things that are accessible and that are healthy. So that's just something I've seen in my 3 years of being in Philadelphia, how the community around the temple has changed and who really has access to healthy foods and who doesn't. And also a big thing going on in Philadelphia is the lead and asbestos issue, which is affecting Philadelphia schools throughout the city, and students, they're being exposed to lead and asbestos in their schools. Teachers are being exposed any basically faculty members are being exposed to being in the school, and it's a huge issue. I feel like there just needs to be more advocacy and education around food justice, environmental justice, and how it all really interconnects.
So there's a number of topics that you mentioned, and I kind of want to bring down to something that we can really understand. I was talking to someone before the panel started, and environmental justice issues are such at a high level that we need to try to figure out a way to kind of bring it down so that we all can relate to it and understand what does it mean, why do I need to take time out of my day or my week to get involved with environmental justice issues. So part of this panel is going to be about breaking that down, right? So Marisa, you mentioned offshore wind and solar. Let's talk about why that's a good thing as opposed to the other side of energy.
Well, I think that renewable energy is a good thing because it fosters a cleaner environment, it fosters economic investment. It is, what customers are expecting and demanding more of. I think that how customers, the expectations of customers today are very different than what they used to be. Right? Customers nowadays, they want more independence and more choice. Right? So if you think of the aftermath of superstorms, right, where you have power that's lost for days and weeks on end. Now folks want solar on their roofs. You want to have the generator in your backyard. You want to have more choice in terms of your options. There are smart devices that you can place in your home. Like Van mentioned, the smart thermostat where you can access it on your phone, right, and adjust the temperature during the day. There are other devices that you can have in your home that give you more control over your energy usage. And all of these things are a good thing. I think it's how the market is evolving. Greater penetration of solar is part of that. Greater penetration in wind development is also part of that. I mentioned that New Jersey's goal is 100% clean energy economy by 2050. But New Jersey is not alone in that, right? So a number of states have either a 50% goal or higher. New York has a 100% goal. Maryland has a 50% goal. DC has a 100% goal. And I can go through other states as well. But that's the direction. I think that it's important from a health perspective, right? Because cleaner air is better for all of us. You can look at, and I'm not a health expert, but you can also see the impacts of pollution, right, in terms of asthma and other illnesses in urban environments. And so you're not going to hear any kind of pushback from me or Atlantic City Electric when it comes to a clean energy future. We're looking at how can we partner with communities, how can we partner with the state, how can we partner with developers such that we're building an infrastructure that is actually able to support these evolving needs.
And can you talk a little bit about how New Jersey is, what are those clean energy initiatives to make clean energy more affordable?
Affordability is a huge piece of it because, with everything there is a price tag. And so, and that's part of the balancing, right? And that's also the reason why engagement in the process is so important because there is a price tag associated with it. But, I think that the investment is also, it's worth it, right? Because with anything that has value, there's also cost associated. So, when you're thinking of, environmental justice, you're also thinking of affordability for the low and moderate income communities. What sorts of grants and incentive programs might exist, right? What kinds of carve-outs might exist? I'll give you an example. Community solar right now is one of the priority pilot initiatives of the Murphy administration. And the state has recently launched a community solar pilot, which is 75 megawatts statewide. That would be the equivalent of powering about 45,000 homes or so. Part of that pilot has a carve-out, like 40% of those community solar projects have to be in low and moderate income communities, right? Because it's important that you create access, and it's important that everyone in a community, everyone across the state, is able to benefit from the different clean energy opportunities that exist.
That's the pilot that's not yet, is it?
It started, so
Okay,
they have not started building,
Okay,
but there was an opportunity for developers to throw their hat in the ring and say they wanted to build community solar projects. And the board right now, the state commission, is reviewing those applications. They got over 200 applications, so a boatload more than anyone anticipated. And so they're reviewing those, and I expect, I know exactly in the near future, they will be announcing who the winners of that are. And then you'll start to see them get constructed across the state. And maybe I'll add just so folks who are familiar with what exactly is community solar. So you're familiar with, I'm sure, rooftop solar. You have a house, you can put solar on your rooftop and get the benefits of that and reduce your electricity bill. Not everyone has a single family home, obviously. Not everyone has a home that has a roof with the right angle that faces the sun, that has enough rooftop space that can actually hold the solar panels. So community solar means that you'll have a solar array at some distance. It could be the next town over, several miles away, which is large enough to support several different houses or apartment complexes. And you can actually subscribe so that you can purchase your energy from that community solar project. And then you can say that you're getting your energy from solar, even though it's not on your specific rooftop. And that's one example of how you're bringing access to solar to communities that don't ordinarily or wouldn't ordinarily have access because you don't have the rooftop space or you're in an apartment building or so forth.
and is that something that you request, or how do you become a member of that list?
I would say stay tuned for more.
Okay, yeah.
Because my company is not a developer. But there are going to be a number of private developers who would be soliciting subscribers to participate in their individual project.
Okay.
So maybe looking at your newspaper for when it launches, looking out for different mailers as people are trying to solicit subscribers.
For those in the audience, your water authority has a very, very large reservoir which is out in Absec. And if you go on Westcott Road, you can see the dam and the water flows off of it. We have proposed a floating solar array that the solar panels would float on top of the reservoir. It's been done in a number of countries. It's also been done, it's done in Sayreville, New Jersey right now. That would be a community solar project where the off-take of 40% of the energy could be benefited to the Atlantic City Housing Authority and the Pleasantville Housing Authority, which could help to, reduce their operations and their rates. But right now we're struggling with the fact that there are 4 semi-endangered birds that forage there, and we've got to figure a way in which those birds' lifestyles are not disturbed, so we can move to the next level at the Department of Environmental Protection. But we're linking arms with Atlantic Electric on that project.
Yeah, that's very exciting. My understanding about the community solar, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in its first year of just a pilot program, so that's why they accepted applications, and soon, there'll be the announcement about which communities will be a part of the pilot program, but I believe the intention is to develop a permanent, real community solar program for New Jersey within 3 years. So hopefully, within the next 3 years, this will be something that's much more available for communities, even whole municipalities to join, which is very exciting. And if I may just piggyback on the question. Yeah, we are in a moment where it is so incredibly important that we are switching over to renewable energy and making clean renewable energy accessible and affordable, because we are really facing an emergency with climate change and the health crisis. And so in addition to the water privatization, this is the other big piece of my work. The latest research from the United Nations says that if we want to avoid the worst impacts of climate change and have just the best chance of having the minimal impact, we really need to be getting completely off of using fossil fuels by 2050. And that the first step to that is that we need to get our electrical system onto renewable energy in the next 10 years. And so it's a very tight timeline. But it's also, I believe that it's possible. That's why I do the work that I do. We have a lot of renewable energy technology that's available, and it's developing even faster. And we're seeing initiatives like the one that you're describing, like this community solar project. We're seeing innovation. We're seeing, I think it's clear from the numbers that communities that have applied to that community solar project, we're seeing just such a demand and a need and an interest in getting renewable energy from people, which is a great sign. But it's a moment where we really do need to take action. And going back to just environmental justice, the principle of environmental justice, I understand, is everybody, regardless of race or class or whoever you are, deserve equal clean environment, equal protection by environmental laws, and everybody deserves clean air, clean water, and a livable climate. And the unfortunate reality is that our country right now is very segregated in terms of pollution along race and class lines, and the impact of climate change, we're seeing very similar things. And I think Superstorm Sandy is just an example of the ways that low-income and working class communities are just so much more strongly impacted by climate change. And so it's just so urgent that we're acting on this now. I'll pause there.
Yeah, well, I'd like to stick with you on the climate change portion because, we hear from people that climate change is not real. It's not happening. It's not a real thing. Sometimes people have a hard time with thinking about climate change because we're thinking maybe it is real, maybe it's not going to happen for another 50 years or 20 years. I don't have to worry about that now. But there are some real life effects that could happen immediately. I was talking to my mom, and she and I were talking about Superstorm Sandy, and she said, when I was younger, we didn't have to worry about these superstorms, and now suddenly you've got these hurricanes on the coast, and the weather is changing, it's getting more aggressive. Can you talk a little bit about make it real? This is happening because of climate change. That is happening because of climate change.
Yeah, one of the handouts that we had on the table gives a little bit of that information, which is some of the sources. But it's hard to say super definitively, Superstorm Sandy was 100% because of climate change. But what's the strong scientific consensus is that storm was made a lot worse because of changes that are happening in the climate as a result of burning fossil fuels. And it's a lot stronger. And we're seeing stronger winds, and we're seeing already rising oceans that mean that when a really strong storm comes in, we see more flooding. We see people even further inland who are impacted. The horrific wildfires that we had in California this year, people have said that's an impact of climate change that we're seeing already, because we're seeing longer droughts. One of the things that happens the planet gets warmer, it's not just about the temperature being warmer outside, it's about, it causes a lot of changes in the way the water moves around the planet. And so you get heavier rains in one area and you get droughts in another area. And so you can have flooding in South Jersey and you can have a drought that causes huge forest fires in California. And we're starting to see impacts in agriculture. When I talk with farmers, folks who work the land, about climate change, that's something I hear from people saying, oh, I see these changes in the growing season and I see these impacts. So we're gonna start to see impacts in our food supply, and the cost of food is something that could be impacted by climate change. And yeah, did I miss anything here in the sheet? Yeah, and I mean with that, of course, fires, floods, it also does a lot of damage to infrastructure. We have electrical outages, we have roads that are impacted, and people get cut off from resources that they need, and so that also has an impact on people's lives, of course. And it's an issue that impacts so many different areas, from your food access to your electricity to just transportation. And yeah, it feels kind of abstract when you start talking about greenhouse gas emissions and degrees of warming and things, but I think you look at the fires and you look at the floods, and that's really what we're talking about.
So I have just a couple of more questions. I want to remind you that we're going to have a Q&A after, so if you got any questions, something you want some clarification on, please jot that down, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session. We have donuts and coffee in the back. Please free to get that at your leisure. And I also have to mention that I think we may have some students here from Stockton for extra credit. We're asked to come here. So if you are here, you can grab a business card from me, and that will be proof to your professor. So I have them for you. All right, so let's talk about food, water, and health, and let's talk about how the environment and how we treat it can affect our food, our water, our health. Amani, you talked about food deserts. Do you want to expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, along with the food deserts, I would say that the littering and pollution going on just throughout the world, but even in just this area, is also a part of the problem. And definitely just in the area, just to talk about the area, I'm at Temple area, there's definitely a huge trash and litter problem. And I mean, it drains, it clogs the stormwater drains, so when it floods in the area, it's really impossible at times to even drive. And if we're thinking about students and walkers, it's just not really a safe environment at all. So I think just, once again, just raising awareness on the issues and just having people really understand what littering does, and just that education as well as just with food. I'm learning that anybody really can make healthy foods, and we just really need that education on just planting, and because it's something that everyone I feel like can do. And I feel like we have more advocacy and education on just like planting fruits and veggies in our backyards and even just in our communities. That's another way that we can really combat the issue. With obesity and asthma and issues with that.
I was wondering if you have anything to add with the water component. I know we have stellar water here in Atlantic City, but there are other places in New Jersey who do not have stellar water. They're dealing with the water crisis in Trenton and those surrounding areas.
When I was thinking about how the seminar could proceed, when you look at water and you talk about contamination of water, you have to go further back to the economic power decisions that caused the event. So when you see brown water in a glass on TV from someone from Flint, Michigan, you have to go back to General Motors, who had one of the largest automobile plants, and when they started to downsize, they had to lay off 27,000 people, plus other companies that did other parts of the car, windshield wiper company, spark plug company. All those people went out of business, and the population of Flint went from 200,000 in 1960, and it's down to 96,000 now. We lost half the population. So the crisis was born out of the economic decision of that major employer, where the city could not afford to continue the water as it was, so it made a cheap decision to start drawing water from the Flint River. And the story is just a horrible story in terms of the health effects of that. Then if you go to lead in the water, which is a big New Jersey issue, this is the December issue of New Jersey Municipalities, that's Mayor Ras Baraka. Lead was known to be harmful to health in the 1850s by physicians who were trying to get the word out. And in the 1850s, there was no internet, nor did they have a big profit motive to get it out. However, there was a Lead Industries Association, which was a lobbying group for lead. And they went all around the country to convince cities that lead was the premier metal to use for the infrastructure. It turns out that lead was more expensive. However, it was easily malleable. It could easily be bent. So some cities jumped on lead and made that choice. They're now feeling the pain in terms of the health effects of lead, which are especially for children. Lead poisoning of children will affect the lives of those children for the rest of their lives, so into their adulthood. So there again, there's an economic advantage for the lead industry to push its wares down into the communities, while at the same time doctors were out here saying this stuff is no good, but yet they don't have the economic platform until finally the Lead Association disbanded in 1970. They continued to push lead into these cities until then.
Austin, did you want to leave?
Just one other thing that I would add also about following the money is the story. If you look at the amount of money that the federal government puts into our drinking water infrastructure in this country, which is, as Mr. Ward had said, I mean, there's no substitute for water. It's an essential resource for life. It should be an essential service of government to provide safe and clean drinking water to all people. But back in the 1970s, and I don't have the numbers in front of me now, so from memory, so don't quote me on this, but the government was spending about $35 per citizen on drinking water system. And now, I think in 2017, it was down to $11 a person. And so that's choices that our federal government has made to deprioritize spending on drinking water. And that's a problem that we need to fix, because when a drinking water system is dependent on the tax base, and you have a situation like in Flint where all of a sudden half the population leaves, and then the city doesn't have the tax revenue to keep up the system, that's where the federal government should be able to supply funding to keep that system going, to make sure that people have safe water. And so just on a national level, that's just taking a very big picture. That's something that Food and Water Watch also works on, is just trying to get funding for our drinking water system, because so many of these problems, it's a very big picture solution. It's just about having the resources to do the essential work that needs to happen.
And it's really important to have the resources on the front end. So Flint's like the perfect example. my background's construction prior to coming to the energy company, but led to corrosive agent. So for them to fix their drinking water, they can't just stop getting water from the Flint River, put it in clean water and go. They have to actually go in, physically remove the pipes from the underground infrastructure out of the roads to repair it, and then to begin to test it. And then all the while, you have, children from the ages of, 6 and under that are developing mental incapacitations because of the fact that all they have is that water. So like, how are you going to bathe? How are you going to, cook? How are you going to clean? So if you are able to invest the resources on the front end for a lot of these problems, you'll end up being able to, it'll be minor fixes on the back end, but once you basically destroy the infrastructure the way that they did, it takes decades to repair in time. The same thing with Newark. Newark's lead piping in their stuff was known for several years, but for them to go actually rip out the lead pipes that are in those in some of those projects or replace them, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars when they give the estimate. So, and that's only for, I think 18 or 19,000 affected residents. So it's not like a huge population. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars just to fix their water system. So again, if you invest the resources in the front end, it saves you a lot of problems in the back. But as Mr. Ward was saying, Jocelyn was saying, if you have a tax base that's really, if your water system is dependent on a tax base, then when that tax base is depleted, people cut corners on, and it's one of those things where you really can't cut a corner on.
So I think at this time we do have some time left. I'd like to open it up for Q&A. Sure.
I'm sorry I was late.
Yeah, that's all right.
Two things. I am a direct reflection of this conversation. My daughter actually has hearing loss because she ate lead paint chips from the building that's now the nice apartment building in Pleasantville that faces opposite the One Stop. The people who own that, when they lived there, they came and they did a shoddy job on removing the lead paint. They did the lead paint abatement, and but they didn't take off the windowsills, and they didn't test the trough, and they actually let dust on their fingers in it, and they did the lie, deny, defend type of deal. And now she's 18 and she's 25% hearing loss, direct result of lead paint. Also, I went to college in South Carolina in a small town, and I was talking to a friend of mine shortly after the Flint, Michigan deal. Denmark, South Carolina, where our college is, they cut corners on the water. They couldn't pay the treatment bill. They dumped HTH, chlorine, directly into the treatment plant. And a lot of people were getting sick and dead, but Denmark's a 98% black town. The college is HCBU, and people started getting sick and whatever. And then the same person who tested the water in Flint tested the water in Denmark, and it was chlorine. It was direct, straight, no cut card chlorine. And they went to city council. They were like, "Oh yeah, sorry, we couldn't pay, so sorry, everybody go to USC, they'll hook you up." So, my background is health biology, lead abatement, indoor air quality. So these things are particularly close to me. And again, I have a family member directly who's affected. So I see this on a daily basis in my work. So we really need to go somewhere and get these things handled, because like you said, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. Think to the tune of $1.2 billion to remove all the lead pipes in the southeast region and fix the infrastructure to fix a 1% population. $9 on drinking water, $11 here. It's one of the things we cut, but we don't cut corners on, that's spending money.
Ms. Steele?
My question is for Mr. Ward. How many municipalities or areas does the MUA actually service?
How many municipalities does Atlantic City service?
Yes. Is it
Only
just
Atlantic City.
Only Atlantic City?
Yes.
I think that this is a good time for us to talk about environmental justice, because as we look at the possibility of a change of government, that agency is what they want. This Black community has water that we take for granted, and most of the people don't even appreciate the quality of water that we have here. Those people who have money appreciate it and want it. And I think that we need to start talking about and start informing people of what is coming, because that MUA is one of the components that those people from other communities, other districts want. And we need to be up on it, we need to protect it, and we need to know the quality of what we have, because you don't see it in a lot of other communities, and especially minority communities. People of communities where people of color might be the majority, not just Black, but brown, Hispanics, or whatever. That's what we're dealing with here. And that MUA is what they're looking for, and they're coming back for it.
Please remember, Jocelyn, this question is directed toward you. I don't know if I heard you correctly. If I didn't, you will correct me. So 47% of the water is of Atlantic City is owned by investors.
So it's
Not Atlantic City.
40% of water systems
Okay.
in New Jersey.
Okay.
So Atlantic City is one in the 60%.
Okay, so if it's available at public trading, could we not buy into it as a community and have a say so? Is just that accessible?
I mean, if you wanted to buy stock in the American Water Corporation, but that's not, it's not the same as actually having the utility controlled by the democratically elected leaders of the town. When it's privatized, there's a real loss of democracy and a loss of transparency, because it's not, utility is no longer like a public entity that responds directly to the people. It's a private company, and there's much less regulation and oversight, and a lot less local control. So in New Jersey, if a private company buys the water system, the town government actually doesn't have any control or oversight over it. It's just directly the state board of public utilities. And so it's a matter of like, instead of the water being controlled at or like accountability at the local level, the only kind of accountability that exists is at the state level. And, you know, there's no ballot box accountability. So if something's going wrong with the water and people feel, you know, your elected officials are not doing right by the water, there's no chance to, you know, cast a different vote in the next election when you have a private company. It's just a decision of, you know, the owner of that company. Or the people who are looking there.
If I can just add just some slight nuance to that. And, you know, on the state level, you've got the Regulatory Commission, the Board of Public Utilities, and the head of that commission is a cabinet official appointed by the governor. The other agency, which would be the watchdog agency for like individuals and the residential population, is called the Division of Rate Counsel. And they are, their primary purpose is to advocate the interests of New Jersey residents in cases in which you have the regulated utilities. So if you have a utility that is not performing as the way you think that they should, if the water company, you think that the water quality is poor, then I would say that your entry point might be to talk with the Division of Rate Counsel and their staff so that they're aware of what your concerns are, so that they can bring them up before the commission in dealing with the utilities.
Yeah, I just to add to that, I would add just that the biggest thing is to make sure that you are aware, because there's been both public and private failures when it comes to public utilities. So Flint is a great example of a public failure with the water system. The state came in, overtook the water system, cut corners because the city was broke, and then that's how they got the situation out there. With a private failure is what's going on in California. So Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, was a company that owns most of the electric and gas infrastructure in there. They didn't do the proper investing in their electrical systems, which helped exacerbate the wildfires over there. They just went under, I think they just settled $13.5 billion with the residents that either died or lost property during the wildfires of the last 2 years. So, but it's important for, like Marisa was saying, like most states have a public advocate, which is their rate advocate that they can kind of go voice their complaints to, and then they're doing it themselves. But it's really important for the communities to be active in making sure that they're watchful of how their public utilities are operating.
Sure, definitely. But I think the distinction is between, a state entity or, state ratepayer advocate group versus, if it's your council members or your, commissioners who have oversight over your local public water authority. Like the NBA, right? These are people who know the community, represent the community, are democratically elected, and have control over being the stewards of the water, as opposed to it being owned by a private corporation. Flint actually was a public-private partnership situation. So there was they brought in the private water company Veolia that was involved in making the cost-cutting decision of switching the water source that resulted in the erosion. So it was not completely public.
It was not completely public.
And yes, of course, unfortunately, there are public failures and private failures, and so much of it goes back to the issues we've discussed about just historical lack of investment in our systems and pollution and et cetera. But I think the piece about who are the people running this water system accountable to? Is it the people who elected them, or is it the shareholders in their private corporation? That's an important distinction, and one that I think people just need to really be aware of, that the question of who controls this resource and who owns that water is an important one.
One other point, just in terms of advocacy and opportunities that exist for the public, is for all of the cases that the state commission hears, there are always going to be some kind of public hearing that are, local inside of the jurisdiction, which are always going to be announced in a newspaper and on a website somewhere. And so that's another opportunity for you as an individual to go and put your voice on the record. And you can also encourage your local representatives, the council person, whomever, to go and put their position on the record as well. And that becomes part of the official record, which then the state commission takes into consideration when they're dealing with that investor-owned utility.
Yeah, I was wondering, I noticed when, as far as environmental issues are concerned, oftentimes when new administrations come in and new people are in place, a lot of times things get rolled back. So is there some sort of ironclad or some sort of petition or anything we're trying to get on the ballot to maybe try to not have things get rolled back once they're kind of set in place? Because once new administrations come in, oftentimes they have their own agendas and they may not be out.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you're spot on with that. One thing, and it's hard to really say this is an ironclad solution. If something is in legislation, it becomes state law. That gives it more of a fighting chance than if it's just a policy agenda or a campaign promise, because then you actually have a law to go back to, right? Or if it's something that is then set up in a regulation, right? Then that also gives some kind of teeth to whatever the policy initiative is. But you're right, like these things, unless it's like the Constitution, these things can be changed if there's a new legislature. They can be changed if there's a new governor. sometimes it helps if you have momentum, right? So if you have a policy agenda or if it's some kind of investment opportunity, and then the market starts taking hold of it, sometimes it becomes too big to go back, right? Or too big to fail. And that's another a way of thinking about the things. But I can't say that there's an ironclad solution. And I think the piece of it is timing. A lot of these big ideas take time, right? It's not like you can do it in a year or even 2 years. You might need 5 or 10 years to see something really take off. And by that time, you've got, you've got an election every year in New Jersey. So there's a lot of variabilities. There's a lot of push and pull. But that's why it's important that you are consistent in your messaging and consistent in your advocacy, no matter who's in office, to make sure that you're holding them accountable to what you as a community want.
Well, I was thinking on the terms of how they use this petition to try to change the governor. Perhaps we can do something to try to protect our water source here. If we're local level. Just thinking of it.
I'm sorry, I said go down.
We're sitting here on an island, and I think that we can't have a conversation about environmental justice if we don't talk about flooding. I work at the convention center, and when I drive to work, guaranteed at least once a month, if the high tide is happening at commute time, I'm not able to drive on the Black Horse Pike to get here. I see pictures all the time of the Bay communities flooded several times a month. And I just found, and the county freeholder, I can't do anything. Atlantic City is not my realm, unfortunately. Even though it's in the county, I don't have any control over the government. So I found out something though this week that really boggled me. I went to a budget meeting for the ACUA, the Atlantic County Utilities Authority, who processes the sewer water for Atlantic City. And maybe you can help me understand this. It's a water thing, but the other side. So when there's a lot of flooding, the sewer rate for the city increases by hundreds of thousands of dollars in a year because the water seeps into the sewer pipe and it has to be processed. If the water's in there, they bill you based on the number of gallons that go through the pipes. So if there's flooding, which is related to climate change, it has a direct impact on the sewer tax that the people in Atlantic City pay. And I would stand with you to talk to your city representatives. What are you doing about flooding in the Bay areas or the entire island? You're talking about 2030 and 2050. This island could very well have a foot of water or more. I think that's really important and urgent.
I agree. I think we're at a point where we are already seeing the impacts of climate change. And so while we are talking about the urgent action that needs to happen to stop things from getting worse, we also need to be talking about adaptation and about what changes do we need to be making right now because of the reality that we have, that we have as our climate is changing. I mean, we are seeing more flooding. That's a very similar issue that I hear about from folks in Camden, where they also have combined sewer overflow issues with flooding. Yes. I don't have an easy answer for you about that.
We also have to talk about flooding where we are in the island and water's coming at us.
Well, we don't have combined sewer in Atlantic City. What you have is the Atlantic City Sewerage Company, which is a private company, has the contract to extract the waste stream out of the residences and the businesses. They turn it over to the county, and the county processes it. Stormwater, that is the water that goes into the gutter, goes underneath into this tunnel that has historically been there, which ends up to, in its best effort, out in the ocean, on the large pipes in the ocean. More recently, there's been an upgrade in the pumping station at the former firehouse at Rhode Island Avenue, which I don't know if it's completed yet, but at some point, the goal is that when you have a rise in stormwater, albeit floods from the bay, the tidal, and so forth and so on, the effort is to throw that water off into the ocean. People are saying, however, as an island, if you throw it in the ocean, where's it going to go? We're going to end up looking like Venice in Italy, where, you know, the water is just kind of rising and rising and rising. So it's a very complex issue. There are areas in town, in fact, where I live, in certain times when it's tidal flooding, I can't get out the house.
Right.
And I have to wait until the tide goes down. I have to drive all the way up to Atlantic Avenue to come in town. So it's very complex.
Have you noticed that more frequently?
Yeah, I live in the first ward, and I was going to speak on the same issue.
Oh, okay.
Kids can't even get to school to Uptown when it's high tide.
Yeah.
You gotta go. I live in the cove, so it doesn't.
Okay, I'm right close to you.
Yeah, but the outside streets, you can't even get out.
Can't get out.
So it's just, it's horrible.
It ruins it underneath of your car because you got that salt water coming up.
And the other issue I was gonna speak on as well, to piggyback on what Ms. Still said and what the gentleman said, what can we do to strengthen you guys' position? Because the government takeover seems to be a serious threat. I have had several people knock on the door to get a petition, but not as many people at all speak about what the vote might be and anything. So it's like the push to take it over seems to be real, but the fight back against it seems to be non-existent.
It was in today's paper. They have
Is it
10
February?
They have 10 days space to do certain things, and another 20 days that they have to do a certain thing. So depending on the decisions that the municipal clerk, am I right, Councilman? It's 20 days. 20 days? It depends on what decision the clerk comes up with.
Verification of the signatures.
Councilman.
But the bottom line is, it's misdirection everybody got to stop focusing on. It's basically not about changing government. It's about acquiring certain things they couldn't acquire, you know, through illegal means. It's about acquiring the water company. It's about acquiring the city government to build certain things. But it's mostly about getting rid of those faces that they don't want on city council, that don't look like that. So when you look at it in its entirety, it's all about people from outside of town that couldn't take over previously, trying to get opportunity to take over.
My biggest concern is those people that sign the signatures are gonna vote, and everybody else is like,
And we have been talking about this. If you've been, I guess, you know, from the city council and other meetings that I have done, and I would sometimes, if I wasn't on the city council. But we've been publicizing this for over maybe 8 months. Am I right, Mr. Hill? We've been putting it out there. People have not been paying attention. But when you turn in 3,000 petitions, then everybody gets excited. But we've been going from meeting to meeting to meeting, talking about the possibility and the reality of what might happen. So when the time comes, we'll see. But they marshaled their forces, got things together. But because you have 3,000 signatures, you only have 3,000 votes. But I'm like you, what we're gonna do to fight back for this time. And it's strategic because people don't vote in February. It's strategic because people don't vote. And they waited until this last general election in order to get the lowest amount of vote turnout. And now they had to get about 3,000 signatures. Now they had to get 900. So they'll be successful, but it's depending on how much the people like city want the government that currently exists. And then also, not to take a lot of time, but it's up to the state. The state can cut this right now because they have the power to use this election as advisory, not as the law, because they are running the Atlantic City government. So the state has a big part in this, and don't let them off the hook. The community, the commissioner, DCA, they can stop this immediately. They say, you use it as Bible, but it's not gonna happen.
But can it change after the vote? Can they change that direction? To the young man, we need more young people like
That's
you.
right.
If we get a list of those people that signed petitions, because a lot of them were not, did not understand really what they were signing, that we need to form a coalition to talk to these people and to make sure that if they're going to vote, that they know what they're voting for. And that's what we are, the end up, not the NAACP. Atlantic City Citizens Against Change.
Okay.
But that's what we need to do. We need to start informing people since the signatures are already turned in. We don't know how many will be approved, but this is the time when we really need to start targeting and talking to people and allowing them to know what the change will mean. We have had a commission type of government before, and that did not work for us.
Yeah.
So
we really gotta educate the voters, because they really don't know what they're voting for, and I'm sorry, a lot of them sell out for a chicken wing and a cocktail, you know? And so we really have to, this incumbent upon us to know exactly what's going on, so that when we speak to them, we can counter everything, what they're saying with true facts. And see, because they are deluding people into believing that they are going to be helping them and doing things in their best interest, but it's not in their best interest.
So here's what I would like to do, because and then I'm gonna just take, because we are running low on time, to get back to your question on how we can, and Ms. Still mentioned it earlier, how can we keep our MUA ours and not belonging to anyone else but the folks in Atlantic City, not controlled by anyone else. We're talking about changing government, but I don't know if everyone knows exactly what that means for Atlantic City. I would like to ask our President Queen to talk about what is the changing government quickly, and how is it threatening Atlantic City? And then wait for Bruce to talk about how we can protect the MUA from the privatization of the MUA, if you see it as a real threat or not. And then Kenya has the final question that she'll ask, and then we'll close it with that.
Briefly, that's a challenge for the elected official, but briefly, Bruce and I are the only ones old enough to remember this. They used to have a game called the 3-card molly. And it was one guy, he would be somewhere with 3 cards, and it was a guy in the audience, and he would make like he wasn't connected to the guy with the card. And the guy in the audience would say, the shell is under the card there, and the people who were in the audience would make bets and wagers as to where the card was. And it was a scam, it was a trick, it was a game. And this change of government is the same thing. Bob McDevitt is the guy in the audience. The people from out of town are the ones with the cards who are shifting very quickly. One of their claims, they said they wanted to change the government so they can have a professional manager. That's a trick, because we already have professional managers in City Hall. We have qualified professional people who are certified to manage government. And over top of that, we have the Department of Community Affairs, which is run by Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver. I would say that they are doing this because Sheila Oliver is a woman and she's an African American. That might be unfair, but some people will say that. Then they say that if you change the form of government, they're going to automatically reduce taxes. That's a shame, and that's a shell game too, because they know that people want their taxes reduced. And they know if they say that you'll reduce taxes, then that gets people's attention. But that's a shell game, because they don't have a way to reduce taxes if they change the government. The next thing they say is that the government would be more efficient if they had 5 people to run the laws. And that's a trick and a shell game too, because those of us who are in government, and Mr. Ward knows, that across the country, when you have a large representation versus ward representation, it's a disparity. That's why case after case, the NAACP and other civil rights organizations, we fight for ward, and district representation, because that's fair and that's more representative. We have 9 people on council now. The majority of 9 is 5. They want to have 5 people at large. The majority of 5 is 3. So what they want to do is restrict the number of people it would take to make a majority and to make things happen. So instead of 5 people, you only have 3. And they want to have an election where instead of the people directly electing the mayor, you will elect 5 people and they'll get in the back room and they'll elect the mayor. I would say to you that that's a trick again, because you're going to have somebody who's going to try to run a ticket, get 5 people elected, and he only needs 3, and they will select a professional manager. That's a trick. And as I come to my conclusion, you need to vote no, and you need to tell everyone you know to vote no. If they want to know why, tell them to ask Aline or Speedy Marsh or Mayor Smallman. We're going to have a vigorous campaign, Reverend Miller. We're going to have a campaign that is going to be simple and straightforward and honest. Let me just say this about honesty. One of the things they did, and several of my neighbors and members told me, in the casinos, is Bobby Deb, who is the shill, he's the president of Local 54. So what they did, they had people who were standing as people came to work. They have a supervisor and they have a person with a petition. So they would ask the workers, would you sign a petition? Now, you don't have to be a social scientist or a political scientist to see that's a fact of intimidation. You have your supervisor, you have somebody with a petition, and it's on the person's job. So why wouldn't they sign the petition? No matter what they said. The other thing that they did, they went knocking on doors, and they said, do you want to reduce crime? Who's going to say no to that? Do you want to reduce violence? When we had those 3 teenagers that got killed, they said, let's stop the violence. And I would tell you, anybody who tells you that they can reduce violence by changing the government, that's a trick. That's a scam. If there was someone who could reduce and eliminate violence, they'd be the richest person in the world. There's violence all over this country. So, vote no, listen to the campaign that we're going to run, and just think about it. Why would Ray Lesnack come from Elizabeth, New Jersey to Atlantic City to change the form of government? I mean, it's just your common sense. They want to take over, they want to control the resources, they want the MUA and Beta Field. They want us to vote for their friends for Beta Field, which we refuse to do. They want to take over the police department and the fire department. Look at Camden. And then Google Norcross, Norcross. And the very last thing, there's an African proverb that says, when the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. And the elephants are Norcross in one corner, Governor Murphy in another corner, and we're the grass. And if you think that that's just political hyperbole, you can Google the ELEC reports, which shows who's putting money behind the change of government. People putting the money behind the change of government are the unions, who are controlled by Steve Sweeney, who's a friend of Norcross. And Morris Bailey, who is in resorts, whose lawyer is Lesnack. So it's an incestuous circle of people who are trying to make money, who are trying to divert our attention off the real matter and trying to take our grievances and heighten them and have us do something that is going to hurt us. So that's really who is at. That's my presentation. I'm sticking by.
So, Bruce, as executive director of the MUA, if you think that this is changing government is threatening our water, how can we get behind you and other folks to save that and to keep it local?
To me, it's sort of like Groundhog Day, because we went through this about 3 years ago when the Christie administration was the city monitor, and they ran the city. And they had a lot of discussion about how they could privatize the water. what we had was a link up with both the NAACP, Food Water Watch. There were other groups that came in. There was a movie that was done. You can still see it on YouTube. It's called Water Bucks. The whole city kind of came together and registered its complaint on a petition to the city clerk. What we did inside the authority was we created a number of slowdown strategies to slow this effort down. We put a number of pieces into play, one of which was to hire strategic counsel from the Republican side to slow down the effort of the Christie administration. And we were successful because we ran the clock. Finally, their term was up. So I think all of us in this room need to listen to what, Councilman is saying. If you want to continue to have your water system where you pay less than 130% of the water system in Linwood, where you have an issue about your water, you don't go to Trenton, you come to Virginia Avenue, where the water tower says do AC, and you will get the respect and the response that you need for you and your family. So this is the challenge that we have. We got to get back out there. As the councilman said, we have to get back out there with our voices, with our feet, and particularly with our votes.
So thank you very much. I found all of you to be really informative, and I learned a lot based on the things that you talked about this evening. My question is, what are some, how can people practically advocate for themselves? What does that look like? So I know that's kind of been the theme on the panel this evening, that in addition to what local and state government and even federal government can do, that the citizens in a community should be advocating for themselves. But what practically does that look like? We know there's voting, but what else can a person who lives in a particular community do to affect some type of change as it relates to the environmental justice issues that they may have in their particular space?
District associations may be one of the venues that you might want to go to. Because it takes a collective body to make any difference. And that's one of the places. And if you don't have a civic association in your area, then maybe you might want to start one. Because what affects you affects other people in your neighborhood. And
right, and I get that. And so it's good that there are civic associations and other organizations that one can join. But from the perspective of the individuals that know how the systems work in a more concrete way, like I belong to a lot of civic organizations, but I don't know anything other than I turn on the spigot and the water comes out. You know what I'm saying? So if I really want to get involved, and I live in North Jersey, I live very close to Newark, and so I know what's going on with the lead pipes incident. So if I really want to kind of get involved, in addition to joining a civic organization, what types of steps should I really be taking to put pressure on the people who need the pressure to do things that we need in the community?
I can speak to that for the energy side of it.
Sure.
So what Food Water Action does is we do focus on changing policy and on mobilizing people to make their voices heard, to put that pressure on the people so we can hear it. So right now I'm working with people from a number of different towns, mostly in Camden County, who are advocating for their local governments to pass programs for affordable renewable energy. I'm not going to, we're short of time, so I won't go into all the details about what that means, but that's something that I have the resources to be able to, offer to people and let them know. This is actually an action that you can take. You can can ask your local government to do this. And I have some people who are just showing up at their council meetings every month and calling for that change to happen and standing up in public comments and saying, I want to see this change in my community. And we have people in other towns who are circulating petitions to actually put an ordinance on the ballot to switch to renewable energy in their towns. And so those are two different kinds of actions that I help people with. If anybody wants to hear more detailed information about that, I'm happy to talk to you later. And then Food and Water Watch is also a part of a statewide coalition where we have over 90 groups across the state involved, and it's called Empower New Jersey. And the purpose of that coalition is that we're calling on Governor Murphy to enact an emergency moratorium on new fossil fuel projects in the state. Because we need to be rapidly transitioning over to renewable energy. And that means that we need to stop building new power plants that run on coal and oil and gas. And so we call the governor every Monday for moratorium Mondays. And we have actions around that goal. We'll show up at rallies, we'll show up at places where the governor is speaking and have people ask questions or shout out their opinions, literally just making your voice heard to the governor around this issue. So we organize that kind of effort to put pressure on the governor on climate action. If anybody is moved to want to join that effort, I have a petition about the fossil fuel moratorium campaign that I'll pass around. So those are just some things that we work on as Food and Water Action, and similar kinds of tactics that we use around our water fights as well. But yeah, also if anyone else wants to share.
Knowing your elected officials is very important because they are decision makers and they know how to leverage resources, they know how to leverage power, they know how the systems and decisions get made. And so knowing them, having relationships with them, voicing your issues with them is very important. Being involved in other groups, whether it's NAACP or another civic organization, AARP, whatever your group is of choice, there's power in numbers. And so when those groups are doing their letter writing campaigns or they're putting in, comments at different hearings, whether it's locally or on the state level, all of that matters because the companies, we hear it, we don't like bad press, right? Right? We don't like being dogged out in the media. We don't, we have our public relations. We want to have a good relationship with the public and with our customers. And so, there is that notion of just being loud and doing it often, right? And then I would say just being engaged. So the process of engagement on the local level is very similar going even into the state level. The people are different, maybe the audience is different, but the mechanics are very similar. You've got a council meeting where you can go and make public comments. On the state level, we have public hearings where you can go and make comments. You can write letters and submit them. And so, I would say just be informed of the issues and then organize, right? Whether it's through an established organization or you want to self-organize, it makes a difference. It does.
Excuse me a second, Bruce. Just like the electric company puts information in the bill and the gas company, can the water company put these facts in our bill?
Well, I have to be politically neutral.
I know, but
Not here, but in terms of sending out a bill, the statement has to be politically neutral. So there may be some way I can say something that wakes people up without necessarily saying after you wake up, don't look at this, but just to wake people up, I may be able to say that. But I was thinking in terms of other mechanisms, there are a couple of people on Facebook that are starting to chatter about it. And if, as you know, social media can be an important mechanism, if this thing comes together and gets an association that is recognized and pulls all of the social media together, may be able to reach more people than it's difficult now in the winter weather to try to get people to come out. You guys, really brave to get out here tonight, and I think we all appreciate it. But sometimes there may be a way to connect people that, you can do from your phone, you can do from your home, so.
Yeah, being organized in coalitions matters. My background, I was in college, I was a community organizer for a student-led organization that was higher education and for a bill that we eventually got passed. And how we did that was organizing, and like not everybody's going to be the NAACP, but if you get this group, this group, this group, this group, and if you unite against a single purpose, because what Bruce and everybody here, that when they were attempting to take the war 3 years ago, it was one clear message by a ton of stakeholders. Between it was the council members, it was the mayor, it was at the time it was a Republican mayor, it was the Democratic council, all organized for this one goal, and had a ton of people to be able to support that goal. Similarly, and I'm used to be, again, like I have a ton of hats. My old hat was municipal solicitor, so I've written those ordinances and those referendums that you're currently going through. So knowledge is power. So getting people to understand what the issue is, to then be able to organize around the issue, to then be able to present the issue to your friends, goes a long way than just saying like vote no or vote yes. So being able to impart that knowledge on your colleagues and your neighbors, it goes a long way as far as organizing and getting to whatever goal you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think I'll stick off of being a good neighbor. I was actually just thinking about that. But I think educating the young people, educating the youth is probably on the top of the list for me, because there's so many elementary, middle school, and high school students that just don't really know about the environment, don't really know what environmental issues look like, and they might see, the environment and issues going on is just normal, which I definitely have seen in Philadelphia. So I think not only advocating throughout our neighborhoods, but also through the youth, and incorporating it into the education can just help with sustainable futures and sustainable careers, and can do much more if not only us and people my age even don't really understand environmental issues going on. So I think it's a large educational piece that's missing, that needs to educate people that look like us.
Well, thank you all for coming. You have a question?
No, I just wanted to make one statement. In regards to, my name is Reverend Hart, I'm Associate Minister here at St. James.
We have to let you speak.
I just wanted to mention about food deserts, because I've been in conversation about a pilot program that they're starting here in Atlantic City that will give accessibility to ShopRite supermarket. So it's a free transportation program that is, the NAACP has signed on, St. James has signed on, just to communicate to the Atlantic City community. It's only for Atlantic City residents, that you can call a number, a Lyft will come and pick you up free, take you to ShopRite, and that's Seacon, and call back, and they'll bring you home. So we know that there is a food desert here. The program, we got connected with the program through actually the code giveaway that we've been doing. And so that organization is also sponsoring this along with the community food bank. And so when you call, you're calling to the community food bank. They are calling Lyft, and Lyft is being dispatched out to take Atlantic City residents only, free of charge, and it's a pilot right now, so we want it to be successful. We know there's a food desert here in Atlantic City, and we know that there is a supermarket coming. But we just wanted to make sure that the word is out.
It's good until the 24th of December. It's good until December 24th, starting on the 20th, November 15th. 15th, it's good until the 24th, all the way up to Christmas Eve. They get free lift rides to ShopRite and NAACP and free rides back home.
Amen.
You have flyers.
And we do have some flyers out. Give you those, and we'll have more. If you need more, you can call the church office. We'll make sure you get it.
8 o'clock to 3:30 each day. 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.
Can I just say, we want to thank St. James for hosting us. St. James is always looking for social concerns, and we appreciate that. The second thing I wanted to say, I want to recognize our colleagues from the Langley and Pleasantville NAACP who are over to my right. Thank you so much for coming out. And our good friends from the Garden State, our association, thank you. And all our families. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot. And let me just do a quick commercial. And I remember the NAACP, we have forms here and pins. We want you to join. And the second commercial about the food desert, the city council is working in cooperation with CRDA and the Department of Community Affairs. We will have a supermarket in Atlantic City by this time next year. And we'll be a ShopRite, we have a location, and we have a financial status, and we are moving forward. So the food desert will no longer exist in the year this time. I just want you to know that we do have everything in place, and we're moving forward with the ShopRite. Have some donuts.